This is the run-through video for the B2, C2, P2 Higher Past Paper 3 video. And remember, you've got these equations in front of your paper every time. So in the physics section, these are particularly important. For example, this one or this one. But the first section is the biology section. So a rare animal called the quoll lives in Australia. It says there are 4 different types of quoll living in Australia. Scientists want to investigate how closely related the different types of quoll are. Describe one way they could do this. So analyse their DNA would be one way, or model multiple characteristics by computer, or you could say analyse their genes, or you could say see if they interbreed to produce fertile offspring. Any one of those get that mark. Tasmania is an island off the coast of Australia. Foxes have recently been introduced to Tasmania. Scientists are worried that they might compete with the quolls. Suggest why the different types of quoll are more likely to compete with each other than with foxes. So the different types of quoll are more similar, so will require more similar resources. Or you could say that foxes have different prey, so either one of those. And then scientists want to set up a conservation program to save the quolls. They want to remove foxes from Tasmania. Write down one reason why scientists want to save endangered species. So one mark could say prevent damage to food chains, or you could say maybe use as food for humans. You could say may attract tourists. You could say they may be useful for medical reasons. You could say to maintain biodiversity, or to prevent the reduction of the gene pool. Or you could say cultural or heritage reasons. So any one of those will get you that mark. In wet areas such as marshes, dead plants decompose very slowly. Explain why dead plants decompose very slowly in marshes. So that's the idea that less oxygen is available. So that's the first mark. For respiration for the second mark. So less oxygen, first mark. For respiration, second mark. Over tens of thousands of years, the partly decomposed plants form a substance called peat. Peat builds up in the marsh and makes a habitat called a peat bog. These bogs contain rare plants. Peat is often removed from bogs. It is sold to dig into soil to improve plant growth. The dead material in the peat is converted into nitrates in the soil. This involves 2 different processes. Describe the processes by which dead material is converted into nitrates. So 3 marks here. First mark is for saying that the decomposing bacteria or fungi break down the dead material. Second mark for saying that releases ammonia or ammonium compounds. And then you can say that the ammonium or ammonium compounds are converted into nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. So nitrifying bacteria gets you a mark by itself. So there's actually 4 points there, and it's any 3 of those 4 points. Many people think that removing peat from peat bogs should be stopped. An alternative to peat for gardeners has been developed involving using the outer coating from coconuts. This is a waste product from coconut processing factories. Explain the advantages of this example of sustainable development. So 2 marks here. First mark saying that using coconuts will not put the rare plants at risk which are in the peat, and the second mark saying that coconuts are being reduced at a faster rate than peat, so it will not run out. So 2 marks there for those two points. The diagram shows part of a food web. The diagram shows a shape of a pyramid of numbers for this food web. Describe how a pyramid of biomass would look different to the pyramid of numbers. You may draw a diagram in the space above if you wish. So that's probably the easiest way to get this mark, just to draw a diagram. So that's the idea. You've got a big first box, a smaller second box, and a smaller third box still. That'll get you that mark. It is harder to obtain the data to draw a pyramid of biomass than a pyramid of numbers. Explain why. So 2 marks here, only 2 of these. You need dry mass for a pyramid of biomass, which involved killing organisms, and it's difficult to collect all the parts of the plant. So there's 3 points there, only 2 of those. The food web contains ticks. This is a drawing of the tick Exydus ricinus. Which genus does the tick belong to? So remember that the first part is your genus, and the second part is your species. So this is a question about just recognising what the names are made up of. So first part is your genus, second part is your species. Next question. Ticks can also feed on the blood of humans if they land on human skin. People often like to walk in forest areas where deer live. If people are bitten by ticks, they can get a disease called Lyme disease. The number of people getting a Lyme disease seems to be increasing. Some people think this is because global warming is making the ticks more active. One graph shows the number of cases of Lyme disease from 1986 to 2002. The other graph shows the average summer temperature in those years. There they are. How strong is the evidence in the graphs for a link between global warming and the number of people getting Lyme disease, and explain your answer. So, if you put there is no link, you could say that the peaks and troughs do not coincide for a mark, and you could say that Lyme disease peaks in 2000 but the highest temperature peaks in 1995, so those 2 points to get those 2 marks if you said there's no link. But if you said there was a link, you could say that overall they are both rising, and both have the lowest values in 1986, that would be your 2 marks. And if you said there was a weak link, you could say that both graphs go up, but they don't peak at the same time, that would be your 2 points. So your description of the link is not, so whether there's no link, or if there is a link, or a weak link, is not what you get the mark. The marks are for explaining why you think that. So yes, another explanation for a link between the weather data and the number of people getting Lyme disease. So mark here, you could say that if it's warmer, then more people will go for walks in the country, or they'll wear less clothes, or you could say the ticks breed more. You could say the ticks feed more in warm weather, or you could say there's just more ticks in warmer weather. So any one of those will get you that 1 mark. Crickets are small arthropods that look like grasshoppers. One type of cricket lives on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. It is adapted to live in hot conditions. The graph shows the loss of water from cricket at different temperatures. Use the graph to explain how cricket survives in hot conditions. So this mark is for the idea that more water is lost cooling down the insect at higher temperatures. But if you put sweating, that would not get you the mark. The cricket made a noise or sing by rubbing their wings together. This attracts a mate. Unfortunately, the noise also attracts a type of fly. The fly lays eggs on the cricket. The eggs hatch and maggots burrow into the cricket and feed on it, eventually killing it. Which word is used to describe the maggots in this feeding relationship? Use your answer from this list. Or choose your answer from this list, sorry. And the answer is the parasite. This is the 6-mark question for the biology section, so please can you mark this yourself using the mark scheme that can be found on the Google site. And then ask your teacher if you're unsure whether you've marked it correctly, just to check it over for you. Look at the diagram. It shows the structure of the Earth. The lithosphere is part of the structure of the Earth. What is the lithosphere? So this is just one of the definitions you have to learn. So there's 2 marks here, saying that the lithosphere is the relatively cold and rigid outer part of the Earth. If you said that it includes the crust, that would also get a mark. If you say it includes the outer part or the upper part of the mantle, that would get you a mark as well. So scientists study volcanoes, explain why. So this is to forecast future eruptions, that would get you a mark, and to reveal information about the structure of the Earth, that would also get you a mark. You could say to find out how volcanoes work, or to find out how lava moves, that would also be fine. An acid reacts with a base to make a salt and water. There's a general equation. Look at the table, it shows some acids, bases, and the salts that are made from them. Complete the table. So, here you're making zinc chloride, so the acid must be hydrochloric acid. So that will get you the 1st mark, hydrochloric acid. Here you're reacting nitric acid with sodium carbonate, so the salt would be sodium, and for nitric acid it's nitrate. And the last one is magnesium sulfate you're making, so the base, you just take the magnesium, the first word, and just put hydroxide onto the end. So there's your 3 marks. If you put magnesium carbonate, that would also be fine, or magnesium oxide, that would also be fine. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, reacts with calcium carbonate, CaCO3. Calcium chloride, carbon dioxide and water are made, write a balanced symbol equation. So always start with the arrow, then say, look at what are made. So there's 3 things. Calcium chloride, which it gives you the formula for, CaCl2. Then carbon dioxide, which you're expected to know the formula for, CO2. And water, which you're also expected to know, H2O. And then the 2 things that are reacting together are HCl, hydrochloric acid, and calcium carbonate, which they give you as well, CaCO3. So if you wrote that out, that's the 1st mark. The 2nd mark is the balancing. If you look at the formula, you can see there's 2 Cl's here and 2 H's, but only 1 of each of those on this side. So to remedy that, you put a big 2 in front of the HCl, and that will get you that 2nd mark. Acid contains hydrogen ions, and alkalis contain hydroxide ions. Write the ionic equation for neutralization. So this is simply H plus OH minus makes H2O. So that get you that mark. Many fertilizers are made by neutralization. Fertilizers can cause eutrophication. Explain what happens during eutrophication. So, 3 marks here, and this is kind of marked like a 6-mark question. And there are 3 levels to it. So, if you just had the idea that fertilizers increase the growth of water plants or algae, or that the outcome is that living organisms in the water die, so plants and animals die, or the fertilizer kills kills the plants or fish, then that'll get you 1 mark. The second 2 marks are the idea that you have an algae bloom, or the plant growth blocks off the sunlight, in addition to the first marks. And then the third mark is just talking about the bacteria use up the oxygen in the water because they're breaking down the dead plants. So really you've got 3 points there. First, for saying that the fertilizer causes the algae to grow faster and more. Second mark saying that that blocks off the sunlight. And then the third mark saying that the plants die, therefore, and they are broken down by bacteria, which uses up the oxygen in the water. So they're your 3 levels of answer, if you like. Next question is a 6-mark question, so please can you mark this yourself using the mark scheme that can be found online on the Google site, and then ask your teacher if you're unsure whether you've marked it correctly. Please mark it yourself first. Ethanol or alcohol is made by reacting ethene with steam. Look at the flowchart. Look at the table. It gives some information about the percentage yield of ethanol at different temperatures and pressures. What happens to the percentage yield as the pressure increases? So you can see the pressure is here, and it's increasing down this way. As you increase the pressure in each temperature, your percentage yield also increases. So if you just put it increases, that will get you that mark. Then what happens to the percentage yield as the temperature increases? Well, the temperature increases across this way, and you can see that across the percentage yield goes down, so that is decreases. The highest percentage yield is achieved with a temperature of 200 degrees and 160 atmospheres. The actual conditions used to make ethanol are a catalyst of phosphoric acid, a pressure of 70 atmospheres, and a temperature of 300 degrees. Use ideas about percentage yield and rate of reaction to suggest why each of these conditions is used. So you can see there's 3 marks, 1 for each of the conditions. And even though they're not talking about the Haber process, you've still got to use those ideas to answer this question. So, first mark about the catalyst, so you can just say that the catalyst is used to speed up the reaction or increase the rate of reaction. Second mark can be talking about the pressure, so you can say that 70 atmospheres is used because it's cheaper to generate than higher pressures. And the temperature, you've got to talk about it being an optimal temperature, a compromised temperature. So the idea that 300 degrees is used to increase the rate of reaction, but to sacrifice the percentage yield. So the idea that a higher temperature would increase the rate of reaction, but a lower temperature would get a higher percentage yield. So there's a compromise or optimum condition to be found. This process is automated. Explain why automation is used. So you can say that it reduces the wage bill or reduces the number of workers that are needed. So either one of those get that mark. Now onto the physics section. John investigates the current produced by a photocell. Look at the circuit he uses. John moves the torch away from the photocell. This changes the current through the ammeter. Look at his results. So results. It says use the graph to help predict the current in milliamps for a distance of 30 centimetres. The first 2 results in the table have been plotted for you. So the first thing you've got to do is plot the other 2 points. So at 40, the milliamps is 12. So each one of these is 4, so you need just there, and the last one is 8, so there. And then you've got to draw a curve of best fit, like so, and then read off your graph for 30. So at 30, you can see it's around around 26 for my curve. But anything between 20 and 28 will get you the 2 marks. Write a detailed conclusion about the relationship between the current and the distance between the torch and the photocell. So 1 mark is just for saying as the distance increases, the current falls. But the second mark is for saying that as the current falls more quickly at the start, but less quickly for greater distances. Or you could say that the distance doubles, current is quartered. Or there's an inverse square law for both marks as well. Explain why this trend happens. So you can say that the light diverges or it spreads or becomes less intense. Or you can say when it's closer, more energy or photons or light hits the solar cell. Or you can say that the light intensity follows an inverse square law for that mark. Light is absorbed by photocells and electricity is produced. Explain how photocell produce electricity. So 2 marks. So what first mark saying the electrons are knocked or released or freed, and then say that those electrons move around the circuit. Amy wants to reduce the costs of using electricity in her flat. She is thinking of changing electricity supply to a cheaper one. Her main use for electricity is her central heating. The average power of the central heating is 6,500 watts. It is on for 4 hours each day. She changes the supply from Distas to Skinner Electricity Company. The cost per unit is the cost for 1 kilowatt hour of energy. How much money will she save each day on her central heating costs? That's a long question. So, the first thing you've got to work out is how many kilowatt hours she is using. So you got 6,500 watts here, so you need to turn that into kilowatts, which is 6.5, just divided by 1,000, and then times it by 4 to work out the number of kilowatt hours. So that equals 26. Then you've got to work out the costs for each company. So you're going to do 26 times 16 for the number of pence that the Distas will cost you. That equals 416, and you got to do 26 times 14 for what the Skinner Electricity Company will cost you. So 26 times 14 equals 364 pence. So then all you got to do is do 416, take away 364 to work out your saving, and it equals 52 pence. So 52 pence will get you all 3 marks if that's all you wrote. And you get a mark for each of these worked out if you didn't work out the saving. Amy has a TV. It has a label on it, but it does not tell her about the power in kilowatts. Look at the label, calculate the power of TV in kilowatts. So power, but in watts, equals the voltage times the current. So that equals 3 times 230, which equals 690, but that's in watts. To turn it to kilowatts, you've got to divide by 1,000, so that equals 0.69 kilowatts. Amy reads about using off-peak electricity in her home. This will be cheaper. Give one disadvantage to Amy of using off-peak electricity. So it's the idea that it can only be used at night. So it's inconvenient to use, or it can only be used at night. So this next question is a 6-mark question in the physics section. As ever, can you please mark this yourself? And then ask your teacher if you're unsure whether you've marked it correctly, just to check it over for you. Our understanding of the solar system has developed over centuries. What did Copernicus do to develop his theory? So this is only worth 1 mark, but any one of these you could say he used astronomical observation of planets. You could say that he used a mathematical explanation or a physical model. Or you could say that he reviewed previous theories or made use of previous observations. How was Galileo able to support Copernicus' theory? So again, only 1 mark for any of these. So you can say he used a better telescope. You could say he invented or developed a telescope. You could say he observed moons around Jupiter. Or you could say that he observed that not all bodies orbited the Earth. And then why were Copernicus and Galileo's ideas controversial at the time? So it's the idea that it contradicted religious views. So that's your mark there. And then the Big Bang Theory, developed in 1949, says the universe began with an explosion. This made the universe expand. What can we conclude about the movement of galaxies from the Big Bang Theory? So again, 2 marks here. So you can say galaxies move away from us, or they show redshift. And you can say that distant galaxies move faster for the 2nd mark. But if you just put something like distant galaxies move away quicker, that gets you both marks. So you kind of merged both those marking points into one. The final question, the Big Bang Theory has been accepted by many scientists. The theory might be changed by future scientists. Explain why. So just 1 mark here. Any one of these, you could say that only current evidence is explained. You could say that further research is done, so new evidence may be found in the future. Or you could say that technological advances, so advances in our equipment that we use. So that's the end of that paper. Please add up your marks, add it to your poster. Hopefully your marks are increasing. There were a few similar questions in there that have been in the previous papers. So hopefully you're building up your knowledge of the different answers that are required. And now get on with the next paper, please.